It's showtime.
We could call and have Muslims try and answer the question. Since Aqil's back, I don't know if you want to try tackling that issue and or the other issue of the false doctrine of the Trinity that's represented by the Quran, how it misrepresents our doctrine of the Trinity. Or, Aqil, do you have a question?
Yes, how are you again, Mr. Thank you for taking the call again. And Tony. A couple of things.
Aqil, how you doing, buddy?
I'm fine. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
We hear you.
Okay. A couple of things before I heard your statement about the anachronism of the Quran getting time wrong, and I will address that shortly. But there's the idea you're saying about, when I called last time, about me misrepresenting the Christian belief by saying Jesus is God. But I think that's misrepresenting Islam when you say that Islam or the Quran got the Trinity wrong. Because first and foremost, in the Quran, it doesn't define the Trinity at all. It just says, don't say three. But there was a Christian movement very early on, and it was called the Quranic, in which they actually worship Mary as God. They actually worship Mary as God, and they worship Jesus as well. Now, I don't know if you know about them or not, but it's quite clear. You can do your history research. Quranicism is the sect of Christianity that deified Mary as a God and worship her along with Jesus.
Well, let me ask you something, though. But hold on. But that's not the doctrine of the Trinity. That's not a true Christianity. So the Quran misrepresents that. Didn't Allah know that that was not a true sect of Christianity? That we don't teach the issue of Mary as part of the Trinity? How come Allah didn't know that?
There was many versions of Christianity in the very beginning.
No. There's not many versions of Christianity. You don't understand what the essentials of the Christian faith are.
Christianity is complete idolatry. Now, when I say Christianity, to be clear, there are some Christian denominations, and there are probably over 1,000 Christian denominations. Christianity is by far the most variegated religion in the world.
No. There's not many versions of Christianity.
Christianity is by far the most variegated religion in the world.
No. There's not many versions of Christianity. No. There's not many versions of Christianity. There's not many versions. I'm sorry, I don't want to be too argumentative with you or a guest on the show here, but it's just that that's not accurate. See, if you were to say there's many versions of Christianity, then no matter what I say, you're just going to jump ship to something else and say that's another version of Christianity. No, it's not. The Christian doctrine is that there's only one God in all existence, in all place, and all time. The doctrine of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, not Father, Son, and Mary. And that Jesus Christ has two distinct natures. He's both divine and human. Jesus died on the cross and he rose from the dead physically in the same body he died in, and that our forgiveness of sins is by faith alone in Christ's sacrifice alone. That's the heart of Christianity. That's what it is. You can say there's all kinds of divisions, but it's not Christianity. I know. I've been studying this for like 35 years. I know what Christian theology is. So, that's what it is, and what you're saying is not what it is. You're giving an excuse for the Quran. Why did the Quran get it wrong?
I'm giving you the answer, but you want to put the answer. First and foremost, this Christianity is not first century. This is 4th, 5th century doctrine. This is after the councils in which they consolidated the belief of Christianity. I mean, initially, for a long time, the Holy Spirit wasn't even considered part of the Trinity. This was 4th century when the Holy Spirit finally was written in as part of the Trinity. So
actually, just so you know, in the Great Commission of Christ in Matthew 28:18 through 20, talked about the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In the last verse of 2 Corinthians, in 2 Corinthians 13:14, talks about the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and we're to have fellowship with them. And then we have what's called the Didache, written around 70 to 80, 90 AD by the disciples, and it mentions the Trinity as well. So I'm sorry, but no disrespect meant, but you're not accurate about that. Again, why did the Quran not get the doctrine of the Trinity correct when it included Mary in it, which we have never done?
The Quran, first and foremost, it says, don't say three. That's one passage. That passage is separate from the other passage in which it mentions Mary as Jesus saying, did you take Mary and myself as being God? The ayahs are completely different. They're not the same verse. They're separate ayahs. In one verse it says, don't say three. And in another verse, God is questioning Jesus on the day of judgment. Did you say to the people, take yourself and Mary to worship as God? This is two different ayahs talking about two different things. But the Quran is addressing the different beliefs that Christians had at the time about God, which is incorrect. So you are misrepresenting the Quran by saying somehow that the Quran included Mary in the Trinity, which it doesn't. It just says that don't consider Mary a God. And then in another separate verse, it says don't say three, desist. That's better for you. So you're the one misrepresenting the Quran, and you're the one getting wrong what the Quran is saying about the Trinity, not the Quran.
It's interesting what that it says there that they both used to eat food. Why would it say that? But you continue reading the context and you get to verse 116, which explains why Muhammad would want to emphasize that Mary would eat food, because it says, and Allah will say to Isa, son of Miriam, Jesus, if you say unto mankind, take yourself and your mother as two gods in derogation of Allah. This seems to completely misunderstand the Christian doctrine of the Trinity, the proclamation of the Trinity, and thus seems to be a severe problem for the Islamic view.
Surah 5:116. And behold, Allah will say, O Jesus, son of Mary, didst thou say unto men, worship me and my mother as gods in derogation of Allah? He will say, glory to thee, never could I say what I had no right to say. Had I said such a thing, thou wouldst indeed have known it. Thou knowest what is in my heart, though I know not what is in thine. For thou knowest in full all that is hidden. And so here you have Allah asking Jesus, did you ever tell people to worship you and your mother Mary as gods in derogation of me? So it seems very clear that whatever else can be said, the writer of the Quran thought that what the al-Kitab, the people of the book, believed was that the Trinity was made up of Allah, Mary, and their child Jesus, which of course is not what the doctrine of the Trinity has ever been. And even if the doctrine of the Trinity was wrong, Allah knew what the doctrine of the Trinity was in 630. And so if this allegedly was written in eternity past in Arabic, it certainly wasn't written by the God of truth.
And that's what we teach. And if you're going to be a Muslim who disagrees, that's one thing. That's your privilege to do that. But at least understand what it is that we teach. Don't misrepresent us because you don't want to be lying or practicing taqiyya. You want to be telling the truth, right?
You see, if you look at Surah 5 verse 116, O Jesus, the son of Mary, have you said to people, take me and my mother as two gods in derogation of God? Firstly, if I take it, James, that you have a fairly rudimentary understanding of Arabic, am I correct? And you've studied Arabic. The word is وَإِذْ قَالَ اللَّهُ يَا عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ أَنْتَ قُلْتَ لِلنَّاسِ اتَّخِذُونِي وَأُمِّيَ إِلَٰهَيْنِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Do not take me and my mother as two gods in place of God. So at the very outset, this verse doesn't even speak about the Trinity. It speaks about the divinization of Jesus and Mary in place of God. It's not saying Allah is God, Jesus is God, Mary is God. It's not saying that. Let's give James the benefit of the doubt, right? Let's give James the benefit of the doubt. That in Surah 5 verse 116, the Quran refers to Allah, Jesus and Mary. And that somehow the other must be read with Surah 4 verse 171. Now here's where I say that inconsistency is a sign of a failed argument. If James is consistent in that, then he needs to be also consistent with Surah 9 verse 31. Because in Surah 9 verse 31, this is what it reads. اتَّخَذُوا أَحْبَارَهُمْ وَرُهْبَانَهُمْ أَرْبَابًا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ. They take their priests and the anchorites to be their lords in derogation of God, together with Jesus. Now in Surah 9 verse 31, it speaks about the priests and Jesus being taken as divine in derogation of Allah. So why don't you say then, you could easily say, well then the Trinity consists of Jesus, it comprises of the priests, and it comprises of Allah. Why don't you apply the same argument?
إذ قال الله يا عيسى ابن مريم أأنت قلت للناس اتخذوني وأمي إلهين من دون الله قال سبحانك ما يكون لي أن أقول ما ليس لي بحق إن كنت قلته فقد علمته تعلم ما في نفسي ولا أعلم ما في نفسك إنك أنت علام الغيوب.
There is only one God, La ilaha illallah.